It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. I'm pre-recording this because Thursday is possibly going to be really super busy. If you like this sort of content, before I even get into it, you don't know if you like it or not, but I'll say this again at the end. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Okay, so feedback. I'm going to be devoting this video exclusively to the feedback on the Abby video. Because after only 72 hours, there were over 300 comments on it. That's a lot. But I'm going to do some specific comments, and I'm going to get into sort of an overall theme of many comments I got for the week. At first, I want to express I was joking around on Twitter about a particularly ignorant comment. I got someone telling me that the thing they couldn't stand was how self-assured I was. And when I provided the screen cap as proof somebody actually made the comment, I left out the first sentence of the comment, and somebody thought they had a real gotcha on me because of that. I left something out. Aha. Well, I left it out because the original comment referenced a 17-year-old girl. And, you know, vague internet celebrity or not, I don't drag 17-year-old girls into internet fights. If people want to be pissed off at me because I edited out the name of someone I consider a minor, I stand by it. Like, there are just certain things, just certain lines you don't cross. So I wanted to cover that. Yes, I did only take everything else in that screen grab but that. My reasons for eliminating that name is when the person referenced the name, I had never heard of this person before, so I Googled her, found out she was 17 years old. Yikes. Nope. Can't address more than that. Not including minors. I have lines. I suspect most of you will understand that line, and it's a good line. There was some really, really great comments, though, and of course I backed out of the freaking video and lost them all. John Hancock, clearly not his real name. Good online name, though. Had a good comment. I'm not sure that the policing and judgment of women's bodies in popular culture should be primarily laid on the stoop of men, when predominantly these ideas have been pushed by feminist women in the mainstream for decades now. And for one thing, there's a chance these men, Druckmann Sterling, have been influenced by what they have been told by feminism all their lives, but of course that doesn't mean I don't at the same time acknowledge their own personal holier-than-thou and chauvinist attitude in the way they talk down to women. On the whole, though, it seems to me that twerps like the aforementioned, I won't keep saying their names because twerp, are only emboldened to platform their own retrograde ideas in policing women's appearance because of the current mainstream narrative maintained by popular feminism on the topic. Men really can't be blamed for this one. The main problem is the minority of women pushing the popular feminist narrative that wishes to police women's appearance by speaking for all women. I'm reading this obviously because I think he makes a valid point. There's an extra level to this, though, that the reason that particular types of feminism become mainstream is because they actually don't challenge the status quo that much. The reason this sort of sex-negative feminism has been able to catch hold in spaces like gaming is because they essentially prop up the pre-existing beliefs of too many well-placed people who also believe that, you know, things like female playable characters don't sell, that women aren't whole people and therefore don't have sex drives and therefore don't want to be seen as sexual beings, etc., etc., etc. Things don't become mainstream by accident. things become mainstream because they're allowed to become mainstream. And obviously, talking about stuff within gaming and talking about stuff in greater culture are not the same thing. So we'll say mainstream within a microcosm. Things are allowed to become mainstream within microcosm because people with power allow that to happen. The smaller the microcosm, the easier it is for fewer and fewer people to control whatever narrative is mainstream. This is why the debate about women in, say, comic books and the debate about women in video games is so wholeheartedly different from what the mainstream is doing. I mean, in the same time period that Winona Earp, with a female showrunner and, hashtag feminism all over it, has a lesbian, we'll say, love scene that is essentially softcore porn. We're fighting about women being allowed to have cleavage in gaming. Why? Because mainstream popular culture media has a much bigger pool of opinion than gaming. And a few well-placed people cannot put a stranglehold on the narrative in what TV viewers like and what film goers want to see, because there are just so much more of them who see particular TV shows and watch particular movies than people who play a particular video game. When you think about the tens of millions of people who see a given TV show, like, people go, oh my God, 2.8 million people watch this, 2.8 million. I mean, nowadays on cable is decent, but in terms of what network TV does, that's okay. It's not great. It's not bad. Just the sheer economies of scale mean that what most women, and let's face it, women are still very much a minority in AAA gaming. So, but a lot of women watch Winona Earp. So, thank you for Oron Darklord for bringing that to my attention, the whole Winona Earp thing, because I do not watch that show. So I hope that made sense. I hope I hope that made sense about the idea that gaming thought is still controlled by a fairly small number of people in the way that movies, TV shows, there's just so many networks and so many cable series and things like that now that it's become kind of democratized. I mean, Black America is doing the FUBU stuff and making shows for them. F y'all if you don't like it kind of thing, and they're catching on because they're good. Robert Rodriguez is doing things like, the El Rey Network, trying to do the same thing for Latino content. We don't have that in gaming. We'll be better off when we do. There's still too much of a stranglehold on opinion and what is considered an acceptable opinion in gaming. And as somebody who's a student of history and as somebody legitimately interested in progressive change and legitimately interested in justice, that's not good. Opinion has to be democratized. The gaming websites aren't going to do it. They've had time. They're not. It's still predominantly dominated by white men and the women and occasional minority they let in. Getting rid of certain people at Ubisoft is a very, very, very good thing, because to me, they are the real hope gaming has in terms of truly representative properties. The fact that they were able to do what they did in terms of having, a black playable character in Watch Dogs 2, and getting Cassandra into Assassin's Creed, and getting Aveline into Assassin's Creed with all the headwinds that are coming out now, there are obviously people at that company fighting with those people with retrograde attitudes out of the way. You know, once Ubisoft gets through this cleaning out the rot, I'm really looking forward to what they do. As far as I'm concerned, every major publisher out there needs to do the same house cleaning. It's just Ubisoft's turn in the barrel. Wait. Every major publisher has similar problems in some silo of their company or another. They just have not gotten caught yet. Or they got caught internally and quietly dismissed the person, likely with severance and stock options, instead of it being high profile. No, you're out. We all know what you did. Granted, you know, Ubisoft was held accountable by the press. Guys like Jason Schreier did their job. I will note that it didn't necessarily start with the core gaming press. It, started because people were brave enough to come forward and tell their stories, and the story got big enough that they had to report on it. But let's move on from that and get on to some other comments. With that, and, you know, the commenter, not me, but he called out, among somebody else, Jim Sterling. One particular Jim Sterling fan bothered to comment, and I apologize, Sterling fan. I saw your comment in the first few hours the video went up. I since lost it in the deluge of comments, but I did read it, and I did appreciate one of the things I said. I'm saying it from memory, but the fact that he is a big fan. He sort of watched the video with gritted teeth. He doesn't agree with everything he said, typical caveat, because he did say that the video did make him think, and he agreed that women have more right, you know, women should get more priority in talking about depictions of women than men. So I give that commenter credit just because I was poking one of his sacred cows. Please don't read too much in that metaphor. And the guy still listened to what I had to say. He didn't just have could not be a guy. I'm assuming a gender there. Apologies. But that commenter listened through, pre-existing bias. So, we need more of that. Well done, Jim Sterling fan. And when fans of somebody do that, that reflects well on the personality. So that's part of the reason I wanted to give a shout out to this person, even though I lost the comment for reference. I have to start screen grabbing those on my phone when I'm reading them, because sometimes, I don't know why, I did not expect quite so much of a deluge here. I can't believe this issue is still this hot. It's baffling to me. It's a video game. This shouldn't be this important, and it says a lot that it is. And Scout is eating tape. I'll have to take care of that after I deal with this video. Other comments before I get to sort of the big sort of theme of the week, and I am stalling while I find the comment. I should have copy pasted again. Okay, here we are. This was a particularly interesting one because this is one comment that was particularly well worded, but this is sort of a category of comment I've gotten this week from people who are clearly informed. Scarlett says, I was angered by Sterling's tweet as well. I've been an athlete all my life, played varsity, aced military fitness tests, and even taught Pilates in a famous gym where many pro athletes and fitness models train. Females don't naturally gain Abby's arms. It's only attainable with supplements like Anavar to increase testosterone, also taken by the powerlifters in your vits. For people who don't know, Anavar is a form of anabolic steroid. I don't judge women who juice to reach a physique or sports goal, nor do I mind them being in a game. But let's acknowledge it's fantasy. We all know curvy girls who resemble classically beautiful characters, and let's be honest, it's 100% possible to buy a big chest from a surgeon. But nobody knows an Abby in real life unless they train enhanced pro athletes. You can't buy Abby's body from a surgeon either. It takes a special diet, plus pharmaceuticals, plus many training hours per week. And even then, it's not attainable in the way it's shown in the game. To be honest, when female athletes increase testosterone to the level that gives them Abby's biceps, in my experience, they also show other masculinization. That is deeper voiced, facial hair, cut jaw, etc. I'm not saying that to be gross, but that's just to share what I've seen. In the changing room at my gym, there were numerous times where women heard the voices of those pro athletes and got scared, thinking they were men. Now that also depends on age and a lot of other factors. Again, going back to minors, if people start, okay, things that increase testosterone are no different than the things that transgender people take to affirm their gender identity. When someone is transitioning female to male, they take testosterone. They also use things to suppress other hormones. That's what makes them different from these people. But it's not just steroids. And I want to make this clear. It is human growth hormone. It is metabolic boosts. The pharmacy of stuff. And we have to keep in mind that sports like CrossFit and powerlifting and things that aren't in the Olympics, those sports are not regulated by doping things. And we all know, the Russian Olympic team got caught because they were particularly sloppy. But the whole reason that the entire Russian Olympic team, with some exceptions, like some athletes who were proven clean, were allowed to compete in that games under the Olympic flag instead of the Russian flag, because doping was so widespread in the Russian athletic program that they had to opt athletes in. So anybody who's like, Abby could happen, here's a Russian athlete. Sorry, man, that's not done. That's not done. It's just not. The few examples I've seen of kind of naturally high high testosterone females, there was all that stuff about Caster Semenya in the Olympics, and even she wasn't that big. It's just, and this is what comes to the other big sort of theme of the week in comments, and it's a valid point. And I was responding to Jim Sterling's tweet in the last video specifically, because that was the one that had everything blow up again. But apologize for my red nose. I am fighting through pain, and so it's kind of hurting right now, and so my nose is going red. I know, weird affectation, right? But something that was said to many, many, many people, some was to me by many, many, many people this week. Wow, I'm tired. Is that it's not just that Abby is fantasy. They wouldn't be so upset and they wouldn't be fighting this issue if it were just that. It's that for years, they were shamed for their fantasy being curvy women. And they were accused of being sexist and misogynist because they were just forcing their male fantasy on people who didn't want it. And now, something that is obviously still very much in the realm of fantasy gets a pass. And it's held up as somehow innovative or hashtag feminist when it's no different. It's no more realistic. It's less achievable for a lot of women. And yet it's given a pass. And I totally understand the anger here. But here's again, I'm going to give you another layer. I'm blowing minds in Feedback Friday this week. The reason, and I wish this weren't true, because I hate this realization, okay? The reason it's given a pass is because people don't think that the average man will find Abby attractive. So Abby is held up as this big progressive icon because she's quote unquote ugly. And I disagree that Abby is ugly. And that's what makes me mad about this. There is a double standard at play here. Abby is clearly in the realm of fantasy. I don't think she should get a pass because she's quote unquote not conventionally attractive. I disagree, and I gave you my reasons why. And this is one of the things that bothers me so much. That this idea that Abby okay, classic Lara, Ivy Valentine, name your sort of busty lady of choice bad, that's still putting some women in a greater status than others based on nothing terribly scientific. Okay, you could argue that Abby's hip to waist ratio is not in the sort of scientifically proven grounds of sort of what men actually react to, straight men. But there is sort of this definite underlying narrative that Abby's okay because she's freakish or ugly or something like that. And that's like really not okay. And that's a horrible enforcement of the beauty myth. And it's really quite sexist because who is anybody to say that, someone like Ivy Valentine is beautiful and somebody like Abby is ugly? Takes all kinds to make a world, man. If you actually put in games what, huge parts of the world find attractive, there'd be a lot more thick women in games. Just saying. The BBW contingent is just underrepresented. And it's true that there has not been this backlash in the past. In, very successful games like Fable 2 with Hand of the Hammer, I bring her up all the time. Cassandra in, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which dual protagonist, again, same thing, right? People didn't freak out. People didn't go, oh, she's ugly. She looks like a man. People didn't do that there. So it's not about muscular women, right? It's not simply that a woman has muscles that creates that. I think there was such a huge backlash to Abby precisely because of sort of the aforementioned holier than thou attitude on behalf of Naughty Dog. And gamers have always reacted quite negatively to those sorts of judgments. Gamers, as a rule, are not very good at expressing themselves when they get triggered that way. I have a working theory that gamers aren't good at it, in part because gamers don't tend to be the type of guy that the media says women are attracted to. By the way, guys, that's wrong too. But, they just want to be able to, look at their anime women and kind of stave off their loneliness without being judged. I'm not making that up. That's what multiple people said to me this week. That they don't want to be demonized because they enjoy looking at fantasies they are very aware are fantasies. The fact that a lot of guys are very socially awkward who like this sort of women come up. It's story time. Again, I'm going to bring up sort of a memory of my time in the television industry. One thing I was really taken aback by was, first of all, how many foot fetishists there are in Hollywood and how openly shameless these foot fetishes were about their fetish. They spoke about women's feet and photographed women's feet and ogled women's feet. It had to be women's feet with, like, you know, well pedicured nails. I knew some guys who were really into slightly dirty, well pedicured feet. But there were certain guys you knew you'd do better with if you went into a negotiation with open-toed shoes and well-manicured feet. The fact that this was not a secret was because they were so open about their foot fetish in a way that men with more conventional attractiveness would not be allowed to do. You know, it's hard to go into HR and said, he made me uncomfortable because he was breathing heavy while staring at my feet. But for foot fetishists, feet are as stimulating as cleavage, for instance. The reaction is no different. What they're doing to that person is no different, especially since they ain't ogling men's feet, right? Now, did I just say people leveraged it to get better results? Well, yeah. I mean, if you have to put up with guys drooling all over you for some reason, you might as well use it as a tactical advantage. Welcome to the first, not the first 7 years of my career. I would have done much better if I'd learned that earlier. But, you go through a period where you feel really wrong about doing it. And then you eventually get a callus to it and go, you know what? Anything that gives me an advantage is something I'm going to use. Now, there were some places I just wouldn't go that other women did. And I wish casting couch practices, would not stop. Every time I was told, you can make $50,000, you can make $100,000 in a weekend, but your husband can't come, red flag, I said no. Because that's, prostitution territory. No way. But some women did. And you know what? I don't judge them for it. Because you know what? It's $50,000. That's Hollywood. That's the reality of that town. And is it sleazy? Yeah. Do you feel dirty? Yeah. There's a reason I don't want to do TV anymore. But then you get into games and it's the same stuff with a different coat of paint. Like, there's still all these code words. Okay, it was the same coat of paint in certain departments in Ubisoft. We all know that now. But there are other ways that jerks in gaming maintain the second-class status of women. And they've inverted the same way. Instead of sexualizing women or hypersexualizing women inappropriately to keep you in your place, they are denying the right for women to even have that power in our own way to keep us in our place. The tactics may be different. The unspoken intent, subconscious or not, and the outcome is the same. And this is why I keep pushing these unpopular views, because I have seen the way any sex negativity, any coercion, be it to cover up or show more skin or whatever, any sort of coercion is just that, coercion. If all types of women are not considered okay, I mean, within reason, I kind of understand why a guy who's trying to concentrate on code doesn't want, hey, boobs in my face. In theater, you'd be expected to handle it, but coding isn't theater. That's sort of respect for your colleagues kind of thing, not a you're a dirty whore kind of thing. Either way, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world coercing women into sexual stuff, or the various people at Ubisoft who are apparently doing the same thing. Again, they're not the only ones. But there's also a form of coercion when women are told to cover up or else, right? When women being confident in the way they look and wanting to show it off while they got it, because trust me, ladies, it don't last forever. That when that is considered dirty, that is also a form of behavioral coercion. It's all wrong. And it, like I said, it doesn't matter what coat of paint it takes. You are still not allowing women a complete range of expression. And guys go, yeah, that's because they're demonizing the male sex urge. This is why I point to characters like Abby. No, men in gaming are still getting their non-traditional dream girls through. That's always going to happen. And again, patriarchy isn't every man has power. It's certain high-placed men have power. And there's a power structure. And a woman at the same level of the social hierarchy does not have the same power as a man at the same level of that social hierarchy. And the fact that we don't have any women in gaming right now, there used to be people like Jade Raymond, but not anymore. The fact that Jade Raymond is working on Stavia, for God's sakes. Is that it? Stadia, not Stavia. That's a sweetener. Stadia. And Amy Hennig is trying to figure out what she's doing next, People like that. We don't have a female Neil Druckmann. We don't have a female Cory Barlog. We don't have even black men with the same amount of power, and we have to ask why. And the problem is you don't hear very many people asking why, because you're not going to like the answers if you do. It's not for a lack of passion. It's not for a lack of interest. God, you go to fighting game communities, there's so many black guys. I freaking love it. Just because, hey, it's like when I was in high school. But there is a greater percentage of black people play video games in North America than a percentage of white people. We should see more high-placed game devs based on that amount of passion. We're not. That doesn't just happen. We don't see women high up, except for on like the Sims franchise. That doesn't just happen. And all of this cover up is just one symptom of that sickness. And we really need to stop being distracted by bright, shiny objects like Abby. And yes, I stand by calling her an object. She's, again, a Frankenstein of 3 different women. You don't do that and get to call a woman realistic. Everybody gets on Hideo Kojima, but at least he picks an actress and it's her voice and her body, her likeness. That's a woman who actually exists in the real world. You can't say that about any of the female characters in The Last of Us 2. Because Ashley Johnson doesn't look like Ellie. And Dina's a pastiche of multiple women. And Laura Bailey certainly doesn't look like Abby. Neither do the 2 other women that they used for that. He's Frankensteining women. The fact that you couldn't just take a single woman in the glory that God gave her and just put her in a fucking game? That really says something about the way this creator looks at women. No woman is good enough on their own for his fictional masterpieces that he's put in that game. Boobs got to be smaller, face got to be different, hair's got to be different. Like, there's a sickness there that not one woman who was a main character was good enough just the way she was. That's sick. I'll die on that hill. There's something wrong with that you couldn't find one woman and go, that's my muse. She's perfect the way she is. That's a problem. That's a real problem. Because there are a lot of really amazing, beautiful, awesome women who deserve to be glamorized by media just the way they are. It really says something about the psyche of a company that doesn't go, all right, Stephanie Houston, you're quiet. Yeah. Even, let's face it, Morrigan is Claudia Black, right? She is. That character would not be nearly as interesting. A lot of the Dragon Age origin characters were made by their voice acting. But, BioWare went, hey, Yvonne Strahovski's gonna be, what the hell's her name? I didn't like the character, but she was like the perfect woman. Miranda, that's her name. And apparently they had to change her hair to brunette because it just didn't look that great. But if you look at her face, that's Yvonne Strahovski, right? Like, circa Chuck. They just took a woman and went, she's gorgeous, in she goes. Little things had to be changed for technical reasons. That's the way it's done, folks. Like, that's the way to really respect women. That's the way to really present women on equal footing to men in media. You don't chop us up into our component parts because no woman is good enough for your masterpiece. You take us as we are and allow women to be whole people. And I'll end it there because I rant on this subject because, like I said, this is a personal thing for me. And I really appreciate that it's a personal thing for you guys too. I will not be getting this personal that often. It's just too hard mentally. Because when you get attacked on something that's personal for you, it actually hurts. The reason I decided to break my rule on this is just because I was attacked. I was attacked by the attitudes of certain highly placed men in gaming who insist on telling me what's realistic, attainable, or achievable for women when they have never spent a day in their life as a woman. And to the people who did that, anybody who does that, because nobody should do it. You can say, I think she's beautiful. Stay away from the I think she's realistic. Just, it's one thing to go, this is not realistic for an athlete. I think that separates womanhood from that. But when you are trying to convince women everywhere that a character who is a Voltron of 3 different women with terrifying results in terms of how the body moved, and you're trying to tell me that person could exist in the real world when you couldn't find a single person in the real world that looked and sounded like that person in one total package. You have a blessed day message to you with that is fuck right off. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.